came to win, to fight, to conquer, to
welcome to class. Today I will be teaching you printing, procedures for print making and types of print making. Sit back as I take you through the world of printing. What is printing? Printing is the art of making impression of words and pictures on paper, fabric, etc. with the hand or heavy machines. A brief history on printing. The act of producing replicant of design through printing was invented by the Chinese in about 594 AD. They created carved designs on wood and protruded surface until 1450 AD when Johannes Gutenberg, a German scientist, invented printing machine and different typefaces. Here is a good example of how the pictures and the works that were printed at then looks like. You see a platform whereby a heavy metal is there and they pressurize the impression on the finished work. Modern day printing machine and printing material. There are two approaches to print making. Mechanical approach. This form of print making involves the use of machines in print making to print large numbers of prints from an original design. The process is very efficient and fast. Flex banners, stickers, billboard, advert, fabric design, etc. are all examples of print design done with machines. Here is a picture of a printing machines and large works that are printed with the machine. Here is another good example of a printing machine and a printed flex. The second approach is orthographic approach. This involves the process of reproduction of letters or designs manually. That is use of hand, leaf print, serigraphy, lithography, yarn print, lino print, etc. are all examples of this form of print making. Different forms of printing and print making. The relief process. This form of print making involves the use of carved design in relief form raised from the background. The printing surface is positive area. It's raised while the non-printing area negative is flat. Example: yarn print, block letter print, etc. Here is a good example of lino cut print. This area which is chipped out is called the negative area, while this area that protruded from the lino cut is called the positive area. All these are called the positive area. It's the surface of these that the artist applied colors or ink upon to create impressions. Here's another good example of a drawn chipped out cup. This area where the cork shape occupies is called the positive area, while these other areas that are flat behind the cork is called the negative area. It's this area the artist applied colors upon to create impression on fabrics or paper. The next is screen printing. What is screen printing? This is also called serigraphy. It involves the process of printing using a fine mesh of zinc nylon. It is treated with an impermeable coating which prevent ink from penetrating specific areas. Here is a good example of a zinc mesh screen. This is a screen. We call it a screen or mesh. This mesh is treated with some chemicals to prevent ink from getting into some areas you don't want the ink to get into, and then you create a designs. After creating these designs, you get a squeegee. What this artist is holding right now is called a squeegee. It's a tool used for spreading colors or ink on the screen or mesh. As it spread this ink on this mesh, the impression begin to create on this flat surface. Here's another good example of a design done on a screen mesh, which colors have been spread upon to create the impressions. The next one is lithography. What is lithography? This is a printing process that involves the etching of design on a stone or metal surface with acid. This surface is used to selectively transfer the design made into paper when ink is applied. Here is a good example of serigraphy, a landscape drawing of an architectural building and people walking around, trees around. Is a good example of a landscape drawing on a lithography stone. Here's another good example of lithography, whereby a tool that looks like a rolling pin is being used to smooth the surface of the stone to bring out the designs. Here is another good one, the procedures of creating lithographic designs. And the next one is stenciling. This one is commonly practiced in our environment. Stenciling. Printing of banner is done locally by stenciling method. It is the form of printmaking. The design or letters are created on paper and cut out with cutting knife or blade to create a stencil. The stencil is laid on the surface of the material to be printed upon. Here you can see a good picture of a stenciling application. Here is the designs and here is the impression. After cutting out the design on the paper, this artist tried to apply colors on the design to create an impression. And here is another good example of a stencil being dabbed upon to create designs on the fabric. And here's another good example of a stencil figures being cut out and alphabet being cut out and colors are being applied on upon to create a good designs. And the next one is lino cut print. Is a printmaking technique, a variant of wood cut in which a sheet of nylon is used for the relief surface. A design is cut into the nylon surface with a sharp knife in relief forms. The nylon sheet is linked with a roller and then impressed on a paper or fabric. The printing can be done by hand or with a press. Here's a good example of a cut out or chipped out lino design about to apply colors upon. Here's another good example of a lino cut which the artist is about to apply colors upon. Here are the negative and the positive areas of it. This is another good example of a lino cut impression on this paper.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to do a lino cut or a block print. I actually have another video for beginners that I filmed a couple months ago, but I wanted to revisit block printing because I've been feeling a little bit of a creative block, so no pun intended. And I kind of wanted to let loose and get back to my roots of drawing and illustration, so I went a little crazy on this. So this is what the block is going to look like. I actually gave all of my final projects away for Christmas presents, but the final product should look kind of like this. If you're just getting started, I would definitely recommend using this pink Easy Cut, which I'll link down below. I used a harder linoleum to carve, but even if you're pro and you're block printing all the time, in my opinion, make life a little easier and get some of this. I'll link that below. Let's get started. Alright, so I'm going to keep the voiceovers to a minimum on this project, especially since I have another video describing all of this, which I'll link in the description below. but I am going to walk you through just kind of the basic steps of what I'm doing. Whenever I'm feeling kind of stuck creatively, I usually turn to nature for inspiration. So for this project, I wanted to focus on flowers. So once you have the image that you want to work with, you have to figure out a way to transfer it onto your block. So there are a couple ways to do that, and I'm just using a tracing paper method where I'm going to tape my tracing paper down and just trace right on top of my drawing. Basically what you're doing is making your own carbon paper so that when you flip your image back onto your block, you can trace and the pencil will transfer onto your block. Once I had those where I wanted, I kind of just went over the same lines on the other side of the tracing paper so the graphite rubbed off onto the linoleum. Because I only had 3 flowers, I ended up just flipping those over a second time and using the same images, so I had a total of 5 flowers. I ended up using the tracing paper method just for the flowers, and then I went ahead and free-handed the leaves. But when I went back to look, I guess I didn't really film any of it, so sorry about that. And then you carve. This linoleum is a lot harder than the stuff I've used in the past, so I'll link both below, but once I got started, I kind of got the hang of things. So I'm using water-soluble ink for this project, and when I went to squeeze it out on my canvas, part of the medium had kind of separated from the pigments, which you can kind of see happening right here. So if that happens to you, just grab a palette knife or something to mix that ink back together, and then you can roll it out onto your palette to get a nice even layer. So we're looking for this texture, and that's how we know we're ready to print. So generally speaking, your first print's usually going to be a test print, and on this one, I realized I didn't even finish carving it. So let's give this another try and enjoy these beauty shots.